Russell Wilson is headed to the Giants, and Stefon Diggs is now a Patriot. We discuss the fantasy impact of these moves on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, today we have news that dropped yesterday. We had two big signings. We had Russell Wilson going to the New York Giants and Stefon Diggs headed to the New England Patriots, which is going to impact the draft greatly, I think, with the way that the Giants and the Patriots draft and then also the teams around them. But let's start with this Russell Wilson to the Giants because we've been waiting to see who they're going to add. Was it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Were they going to go for a guy like Russell Wilson or maybe try to get Cam Ward in the draft, right? Or go with a rookie. Now that they signed Russell Wilson, just a one-year deal, $10.5 million, does that mean they're not going with a rookie quarterback this year? They're not going to take a quarterback at number 3 or try to move up because they also signed Jameis Winston. So that's also kind of making this all confusing.
Yeah, they went from Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito to now Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito. That's your Giants quarterback room as they look for answers here. Now, the Giants most notably were at Cam Ward's pro day. They had a couple representatives, including offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. But here's the rub. The Titans were also there, and they had 4 people right in front and center of that. So what's happening here? It seems like it's getting more difficult to convince the Titans to take a trade. And also maybe they're not offering enough. The Titans are still listening for trade offers, but I think they're also liking Cam Ward enough at number 1. And look, the Titans really haven't done anything. They've said they're going to move on from Will Levis and really haven't looked to have a legitimate starting quarterback option. Mason Rudolph is now back in Pittsburgh. So there's all these things that point to saying maybe the Giants are done and this is what they're going to do at quarterback, or they're not just saying we're going to put all our apples in this basket and say we're going to go after a rookie quarterback because it may not happen, right? With 1-2, the Titans could take Ward. The Browns could take Shedeur Sanders. All they have right now is Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterback option. So Wilson and Winston doesn't seem exciting, but then they also paid quite a bit for Wilson. So this also tells you something. Remember, the Steelers didn't pay all that much because the Broncos were paying most of his salary, but now Wilson got more than $20 million in this deal. So you'd think that's a bridge quarterback, 1-year type of deal here for the Giants. And if you think they're going to take a quarterback, then it would be more of a developmental quarterback. Now, let's say Wilson is the starter. This is not the worst thing, right? Either scenario is not the worst with Winston or Wilson because they're veterans. They're going to put the ball up to the number 1 guy. The Giants did bring back Darius Slayton across from Malik Nabers. This is an ascending offense potentially around the quarterback. I mean, the offensive line played a little bit better last year. Tyrone Tracy came on. I think Theo Johnson could be a bigger thing at tight end if he's healthy. So this is actually an offense with some interesting weapons. I'm not going to say I'm going to bang the table and say we're going to draft Russell Wilson because we only saw that in flashes with the Steelers' weapons last year of him producing. So, again, I think it could be a lot worse to not facilitate these weapons. So, look, Nabers got it done with that mess of a grouping last year. Jameis Winston fed the heck out of Jerry Jeudy, and he was a top fantasy option that we didn't expect last year. Pickens and Wilson didn't get it done, but I really think now you look at Nabers, he should be at least happy a veteran is going to get him the ball, and he's got Slayton back to give him some experience on the other side.
My worry with Russ, like if it was Jameis Winston, we would love this for Malik Nabers, right? Like, let's go. If, Wilson gets an injury or something, or he gets benched, Winston coming in would be great for Nabers because he's just going to chuck it up to Nabers nonstop. The thing with Russell Wilson that scares me is, yeah, he's an upgrade to Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock and those guys, but he refuses to throw the ball in the middle of the field. It's infuriating. It's insane. And it makes for a really bad offense. And it makes for it's hard for these wide receivers. So Nabers is going to have to catch a lot of boundary receptions, a lot of those moon balls. And we'll like it when he gets to the long, deep reception. But I don't know how many games he's going to have those 12 targets where he's over the middle and he has a chance to break one long, right? Instead of just catching it deep. I hate this move from Malik Nabers. I'm super, super high Nabers this year. This is going, with it being Russell Wilson, that it looks like he's going to be the starter. I have to move him down a few spots. I do think this is one of the worst scenarios for him for a quarterback this year.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the fact that Nabers is just really talented. He reminds me, you know what it is, a little bit similar to the DeAndre Hopkins situation when he first got to Houston. He went through all those quarterbacks, and you finally found the one for a short period of time, Deshaun Watson, and then he went over to Arizona, and then he had Kyler Murray for a while. So that worked out, right? I mean, he had to develop and have some big years without those top quarterbacks, but I think he's a talent that can just get the job done. And guess what? If Russell Wilson is not doing what they want and executing the offense, they'll just turn it to Winston, right? They'll just say, sorry, Russ, I mean, we tried with you. It's only 1 year commitment to him. So it's not like they're committed long-term to him as a starter. And it still doesn't say they may not draft a quarterback later in the draft. I mean, they just had to pick up somebody to keep this room kind of interesting. So they're just doing something because they couldn't wait around all day for Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk a little bit about him later in the show, but I think this is okay. It's not going to move the needle on Malik Nabers. Let's not say that, but I think he can still get it done. He might be in a different way, but again, I like that they have Winston as a contingency, and they actually signed him first. So if something happens here, I think either way you're looking good. And look, Russ also was hurt early last year. He's older. He could have durability issues, and he's not on the field, where Winston is just up there chucking things. So I think, look, let's see what goes on here, but it's better to get than some unproven rookie project that isn't Ward or Sanders starting for the Giants, because we didn't want any more of that we already saw last year.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe they still can move up for Cam Ward or end up getting
maybe.
him.
Who knows?
Winston's only on a 2-year, $8 million contract, so they could move on from him very easily if they didn't want to keep all three guys. And then with Russell Wilson, I don't think he's going to be too fantasy relevant, with the New York Giants.
No.
He had a couple good games with the Steelers, but besides that, it was mostly just mediocre. Maybe just a streamer type of guy this upcoming year in good matchups. But yeah, overall, not a super exciting signing by the Giants, who said they're going to do everything to find a quarterback. And this was what they went with. But we did have Stefon Diggs headed to the Patriots. That was a necessary move by the Patriots to get Drake Maye some weapons. We will talk about that fantasy impact right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I use this app all the time for a reason. I actually just used it yesterday to buy some Astros tickets going to the game on Wednesday. But I love this app because you get to see your view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It takes seconds to buy your tickets. It's so easy. 2 taps and you're set. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantees, job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and you redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, we got Stefon Diggs finally finding a home this offseason. He's signing with the Patriots, 3-year, $69 million deal. I mean, that's a pretty good deal for a guy that's going to be 32 years old this season in November, for a guy coming off an ACL tear from the middle of last season. He tore it late October. That's the first concern, right? Is he going to be ready to play? Because yes, the Patriots needed to add weapons, and that I don't know if that necessarily means they won't go for a weapon for Drake Maye early in the draft as well. But how early will Stefon Diggs be ready to go? And does he have much left in the tank?
Yeah, a couple things. It surprised me the timing of this, like doing it so late in free agency and then giving him that much money. Like maybe they had to check out if he was on track to recover from his knee injury. But you make a really good point that he's getting older. He's 32. And I don't know if you can trust for him to be at that same level because the whole thing with the Bills was you're getting some declining, diminishing returns from him. That's why they kind of moved him to Houston. So I don't know what you're going to get. I mean, it's a lot of what ifs and variables here, but all I do know is this also showed that the Patriots are pretty desperate to get a top veteran receiver for Drake Maye. Now, you look at what Diggs was doing, however, before he went down with the torn ACL last year, he was on average the wide receiver 19 and half point PPR. That put him right in between Lad McConkey and Jamison Williams. So two different type of receivers who are getting it done in different ways. One guy through volume and hands and routes, and one guy doing it through some big plays there. So that's the kind of stuff you got from Stefon Diggs last year. Now it's a completely different offensive situation, but it is Josh McDaniels. It is Drake Maye. And Drake Maye, look, showed some competency. He went to the Pro Bowl because he kind of executed what he had around him, and he's a rising young quarterback. So I think this definitely does help Drake Maye in terms of liking him as another sleeper that we like at quarterback, especially among these second-year guys. But in terms of Stefon Diggs alone, I need to see a little bit more. But again, this is where he peaked out last year at wide receiver 19, and that was a perceived very good year with C.J. Stroud. The difference is Nico Collins was the number one. Diggs actually might be the default number one in this situation. So I'm saying this is where probably his ceiling is, mid-range wide receiver 2, and his floor might be more wide receiver 3 based on what this offense is. So just don't get too excited. This is not going to turn back the clock to when he was a top 10 receiver in fantasy with the Bills.
I do think it's a good move for them to get for Drake Maye, though. Get a veteran in there, help him out, help him develop. And I mean, I was surprised by Stefon Diggs' production last year before he got injured. I mean, he scored over 15 fantasy points in 4 of his 8 games, a couple other good, solid games in there as well. And then it really just comes down to the injury now. Will he be ready? And that's what worries me because the Patriots haven't added anyone else, right? This is their move this year. I guess it's like they really, really need weapons for Drake Maye. They also need to upgrade their offensive line. So maybe now that they added Diggs, they feel they can use the number 4 over pick on offensive line. I still think they should take a wide receiver in Travis Hunter or maybe Ted McMillan. But do you think this move just keeps the Patriots from taking a wide receiver there in the top of the first round?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know where Ted McMillan is going. We'll get a little bit more into the draft as we get into April, and we're getting closer to that time on April 24th. But yeah, McMillan is a really hard guy to peg because I've heard the Panthers are interested. I've heard him go as high to the Raiders. We have the Patriots in the mix, a few picks before the Raiders. I don't know if that precludes them from taking another receiver. I personally would say no, because you need a lot of weapons for Drake Maye. It wasn't just one guy. So maybe they look at a different type of weapon, right? Maybe they look to upgrade tight end. I know they're bringing back Hunter Henry, but remember McDaniels installed the 2 tight end sets and got a lot out of that. So maybe they look at a Tyler Warren and jump people for him. And Tyler Warren's been going a little bit higher than we expected in some mocks, and he's kind of a wild card in that first round as well as McMillan. So the Patriots have a lot of options. Again, I think offensive line would be the same move, but I think they could do a lot of things to upgrade Maye. But I would think they're thinking as much as they can, unless Travis Hunter is on the board, which he may not be at this point. Maybe the Giants are locking into him at 3, and that's why they went after these 2 other quarterbacks and say, look, we need to upgrade corner, maybe get an extra complimentary receiver in some packages for Malik Nabers. Now, I think the Patriots will still think about it. They could also add their patented slot receiver there, right? That has been really good for Josh McDaniels, maybe the 2nd round, 3rd round, add those type of players as well. So I don't think they're close to done to getting Drake Maye help here. Let's hope not. If they are, we're going to be worried and maybe drop him a little bit from our sleeper status in year 2. But again, this is a decent start. Again, I'm a little bit intrigued by it. again, Diggs is going to pop up on the radar as a fantasy asset again if healthy. Now let's see if we can get Drake Maye there with a few more moves from New England this offseason.
Yeah, if they're able to upgrade their offensive line a little bit in the draft, somehow land, like if they could also land Travis Hunter, like that would make Drake Maye extremely interesting. Right now, I have him as my quarterback 17, but if they're able to land one of these top skilled players in the draft, it would definitely move them up a little bit. I mean, whoever lands here, they're going to have a prime opportunity because, again, I don't know if Stefon Diggs will be ready in week 1. And last year, it was Hunter Henry who led this team with 97 targets. That cannot happen again. Like, it can't be Hunter Henry leading this team. He's a fine tight end. He's not the dynamic tight end that you want to be the focal point of your offense, like a George Kittle or Travis Kelce. And then the leading wide receiver on the Patriots, Mario Douglas, with 87 targets just for 621 yards. Again, just not getting it done. So a huge landing spot for someone. And with Josh McDaniels there as a play caller, with Drake Maye going into his second year, there is a great opportunity for whoever lands there with Stefon Diggs. We're going to discuss a couple more quarterback possible moves to finish up today's show. It does look like Aaron Rodgers' last option might be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, like we brought up earlier, it looks like Cam Ward might be headed to the Titans. So we're going to talk about how we feel about those two things to close up today's show right after a quick break. All right, let's continue our show today. Aaron Rodgers, still not signed with anybody. He visited the Steelers, left without a contract. The two teams that he was rumored for, I guess technically 3, the New York Giants, they signed Russell Wilson. So it seems like Rodgers is not going there. And then you have the Vikings come out and pretty much say like they don't want Rodgers, but who knows? So it comes down to the Steelers. It feels like it's the only team left. And also, now that Russell Wilson signed, there's really no free agents for the Steelers to sign either. They have a later draft pick that it's not going to be easy to get a rookie quarterback that can start. And right now, their starting quarterback is Mason Rudolph. So it's kind of like Rodgers needs the Steelers and Steelers needs Rodgers. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, the staring contest has begun, I guess. I mean, they're down to each other. Then we've had the whole Cameron Hayward controversy about calling out Rodgers and his decision-making process, and now he's apologized. So does that mean we're looking at potentially the Steelers going forward with this with no Wilson? They weren't going to bring back Wilson anyway, but some people were throwing out crazy ideas for them to not go after Rodgers and go get Joe Flacco instead. That was a buzzy thing that I saw on the internet yesterday. So we'll see if they want to go in a different direction. Now, if they go out and get Joe Flacco with Mason Rudolph, you pretty much know that the Steelers are going to be drafting a quarterback. Now, if they go with Rodgers, it could go a little bit either way. Maybe they wait a little bit. And Quinn Ewers just had his pro day. The Steelers met with Ewers. They like him a lot. The Colts and Jets are also interested in this quarterback out of Texas. Pretty good. He looked really good the other day, just throwing out the balls everywhere. And I think he looked pretty confident in what maybe these teams are looking for as someone they can develop. So maybe that's how you go, right? You get some bridge guys and a development quarterback. He could be in play for the Giants, right? The same way. So we'll see what happens. The Steelers shouldn't be desperate enough to say we're going to go after Rodgers because this team, they're going to figure out a way to win 10 games, even if it's Mason Rudolph or Joe Flacco or someone else starting that isn't Rodgers. If they get Rodgers now, things change a little bit. I don't think he's totally washed. I think the whole question is, will he have some chemistry? Will he be able to make it work? We know he'll have a big arm that comes in and makes sure that George Pickens and DK Metcalf get the ball downfield. And what's good about this is there's no Allen Lazard, there's no Devontae Adams, there's no Randall Cobb, there's no guy that he has favorites with, so he's going to come in and just throw to the guys he has that are the most talented. So I think this could actually work out okay in the favor of both of these parties, and sometimes this late waiting can be okay. So let's see what happens. I'm not 100% sold that this is what both parties want, but it may be what they need and the only thing they can do at this point. So again, it wouldn't be terrible if it's Rodgers again. I think there are a lot of questions about what really he played like last year, but it was more the mental stuff and the weighing of the locker room. Now, if they can get that in check, I think on the field, Rodgers still has something left beyond 40 to deliver and execute to the point these guys become fantasy relevant.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I as a Steelers fan, I don't want Aaron Rodgers to be the quarterback of the team I'm rooting for. But for fantasy, when it comes to DK Metcalf and George Pickens, I mean, this is the best option available for them right now by far, right? I like Quinn Ewers a lot. Big Texas Longhorns fan. I think Ewers could be good in the NFL too. If he develops a little bit, probably not a year one starter. I would like him to be able to sit, but Rodgers would feed DK and George Pickens. He can throw deep still. He's going to get the ball out quickly. Like it would be really good for those two, right? That both DK and George Pickens would go up the rankings a good chunk if Rodgers were to sign there compared to them having Mason Rudolph, where I mean, one game he could throw 4 touchdowns, and the next he could throw 0 with 4 interceptions. So yeah, that's definitely. It seems like both sides don't really want to do it, but both sides know they kind of have to. So just waiting game there. And now to finish up our quarterback conversation. Now that the Giants went with Russell Wilson, and Cam Ward had his pro day, and the Titans were there. They brought a bunch of guys. It seems like they're really, really considering going with the quarterback first overall. But like Cam Ward is someone that we'd be interested maybe in as a sleeper for fantasy as a rookie, right? Wherever he lands. But the Titans would be a pretty bad landing spot overall. I mean, you got Calvin Ridley and pretty much no one else.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, because the Titans have some makings, and I've talked about this before, that they are kind of a Sean McVay offense adjacent when you look at where Brian Callen came from with Zach Taylor. Now, I don't think what's going to happen is I've made some loose comparisons. These are loose comparisons to Cam Ward and Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's the same it factor quarterback as Jaden Daniels. There were a lot more dynamic things going on. I mean, you had him win the Heisman. He was rolling. I know it was a different story this year because Travis Hunter kind of had a special year that we had not seen. Cam Ward had a bit of a drop-off in the end of the year. He wasn't spectacular. I think he was very good for the Miami Hurricanes, but you go back, and I think he's going to be pretty good in the NFL. I just don't think he's going to have the same quick, immediate impact we see with Jaden Daniels. Like, again, nothing could have worked out better for Jaden Daniels than going to the Commanders, right? He had the Cliff Kingsbury, he had the weapons, he had everything that he was going to do here. The Titans are a bit of work in progress. They got to figure things out. They've been hacking away at their offensive line for a while now, trying to get it up front and get it solidified. I mean, they've had draft picks, they've had veterans in there. So that's the thing is, can they get the offensive line up to speed? Can they get Tony Pollard to be a little bit more consistent in the running game and have that as a foundation? And then you look at the receivers, yeah, they actually kind of got a little bit gutted there. Is Calvin Ridley really number one the way that Terry McLaurin is? Are the tight ends ever going to step up and be as big of a role as like everyone buzzes about every single year? So, yeah, you're right. It's not nearly the landing spot, but I think there are some makings of a decent offense. I think maybe we're also looking at perspective that we've seen Will Levis and Mason Rudolph in this offense, so we have seen the limited potential. I do like, however, Ward's readiness. You can tell that. Like, he's been in multiple programs, Incarnate Word, Washington State. He's been used to change all throughout his college career. He's had a lot of experience. He's thrown with a bunch of different receivers, so that's going to help, I think, his transition to the NFL. I would put him on the sleeper radar. Like with Jaden McDaniels, I was like, stamp this. He's going to be a top 12 quarterback. Like, you're not going to feel that with Ward. Like, he's a guy that you draft. Oh, he's got some upside. Maybe he can do some things second half of the year. I think that's more legitimately what you're going to look at. I think the same goes for Shedeur Sanders. Like, if he goes number 2 to the Browns, I think you feel the same way. Like, there's some pieces, but the Browns aren't all that good. He's going to need some time. And so, again, you're just not going to bang the table for any of these rookie quarterbacks the way you might have with Daniels and even the Caleb Williams upside at this point last year.
Yeah, and Cam Ward doesn't give you the rushing production
no, not
like
the same
Jaden
way,
Daniels
yeah.
did. So he's going to need to throw a lot of touchdowns, right? Like what Bo Nix did this year as a rookie.
Yeah.
He threw a lot of touchdowns and scrambled a little bit. That's what Cam Ward will have to do. The only issue is I just don't think he has the weapons to be able to throw that many. But at the same time, It felt like Bo Nix was going into a situation with not many great weapons, and it ended up working out where Cortland Sutton stepped up big time. So maybe Calvin Ridley could do that.
That's a good
as well.
comparison, I think, with Bo Nix for sure. I mean, I think that's really good, Michelle, where you bring that in, because I would have felt the same way. Like, there's some potential with Bo Nix, but keep in mind, we weren't looking at him to start in fantasy for a while. Even though, like, we talked about him and he has a decline, we just looked up and said, "What? He's this high up?" And people weren't regularly starting that guy the way that we were starting Daniels from week one. So I think it could be a similar, catch us by surprise situation here with Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders here in 2025.
That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. But for your second listen, go check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.